Hello, people. How are we all doing?
Howdy.
How are you? Okay. Judson, did you join me? Me and Judson were just talking. Is he on?
Yes, I just joined in.
You just joined? Okay. There we go.
Okay, are you able to
I
are
am
you are
going
you
right
in
now.
Uber conference?
Yeah, hold on 1 minute. I am joining. There we go. All right, Judson, I think you need to share me or share.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share the screen in a moment.
And who do I have? Well, Judson, you're giving me the invite or sharing the screen. David Arnold,
Well,
are you on? Dave Arnold, are you on? He might be running late. Ebony, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Mitch, are you on?
Yes.
Nick Fralick, are you on?
I'm here, and I believe Wendy is on as well.
Yes,
Okay,
I am.
hello. I see Casey's joined. Do we have, let's see, who else is showing me here that's in attendance? I do have viewer 2 and a 782. Is Samantha, are you on, Samantha? Okay, she's not on today. I do have 2 additional viewers. Who did I not mention? Okay, so I have Ebony. Who is that?
This is Wendy. Mine was set as viewer 2. I changed.
Okay. Hi, Wendy. How are you?
Good, and you?
Thank you all for joining. I apologize for a little bit of the late delay. We are on board right now. Judson, I am recording this. I'm going to get this up and throw that up on the Dropbox as well. And Judson, I sent you a snapshot in an email of where we left off. It was in regards to outbound dialer settings.
Yes.
That's where we left off
Yes.
last time.
Yes, I did take a look at that, and this is just about where we left off. So, to start the call, I guess we'll just do a brief review of what we covered during our last conversation, and then just from there pick up exactly where we left off and continue with the campaign settings.
Perfect.
So I'm not sure if you guys are able to see my screen at the moment. Please confirm.
I can see it. Can everyone see his screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Nick?
So during
Yes, I can see it as well.
Perfect.
Great. So during our previous conversation, we covered a few components within the Fenero platform. We took a look at how to configure them, and of course now we're digging into the campaign and putting it all together to create your custom telecom solution. So what we did cover was creating stations and configuring those stations on your cell phone as well as users. And as discussed during our previous conversation, we'll use the stations application to create any individual stations or extensions. And from here, we can manage all of the different settings for your station. And the information you have here is exactly what you'll plug into your cell phones to get those cell phones programmed to be used by your agents. All right. We also covered the user accounts, which is managed within the user's application. And as we discussed, you have multiple user levels. So you have an agent level, which is simply your agents, and these user accounts are only able to log into the agent side of the application, and that's only to handle customer interactions. We have the manager level, which allows you to create managers to manage specific programs, and of course you're able to create user accounts for your clients within the managers tab, because manager accounts, you have the ability to restrict to specific applications, specific programs, and specific functionality. And the highest level user account is the administrator, which pretty much has access to every aspect of the platform. Okay, and all 3 account types or account tiers are managed within the user's application. You can always come in here, click edit on any given user account, and tweak and edit that account's permissions and access. Okay. Now, following these 2 applications, we did begin diving into some of the campaign configuration. So I'll just pick up where I left off there. We'll go into the campaigns application. We have our one campaign we created, which was the demo campaign. We'll click edit. From there, we're able to view all of the campaign configuration and make any changes if need be. So what we covered in terms of the campaign settings was the general tab, hours of operation, how to assign users, and of course, we got into some of the dialer tab, but we didn't complete that. So on the general tab, there's just general settings where you can specify the name of your campaign, the caller ID to be used, what type of campaign, whether it's an outbound manual, outbound power dialing, or one of the predictive options. You can specify a launch URL, which is a URL that opens up on the agent's desktop when they make or receive a call. You can determine your hold music. Of course, you can decide whether or not you'll record every single phone call. I'm not sure why you wouldn't. False codes, you can make false codes required or optional. And in the hours tab, this is where you specify the hours of operation for your program. The important thing to keep in mind regarding the hours tab of your campaign is that these hours refer to your prospects, not yourself or your agents. So looking at the current setup where these hours are set from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., what this means is you would not dial any lead before 6 a.m. or after 6 p.m. within that lead's time zone. Okay. The user tab is fairly simple. You simply allows you to assign or unassign agents to this campaign by simply clicking on the agent name. And of course, it's the same process for managers or client accounts. The queues tab is more so towards setting up how this campaign would interact or how this campaign would allow your agents to interact with inbound calls. So we'll get to that tab when we begin discussing inbound. So for now, we'll skip the queues tab, and we'll continue on the dialer tab where we left off during our previous conversation. So, of course, we covered the line-to-agent ratio. So if your campaign type is configured as a line-to-agent ratio campaign, of course, you have to specify the ratio or the number of lines you'd like the dialer to dial per agent. And, again, that's per agent. So if you have 2 agents logged in and your ratio is set to 5, if both agents are idle or available, the dialer would dial 10 calls, 5 per agent. Okay. Following that, we did discuss some of the predictive options, which is the maximum predictive ratio, predictive intensity, predictive target, as well as dial threshold. And again, with a line-to-agent ratio campaign, these settings are ignored, but in a predictive campaign, these settings would determine exactly how aggressive the dialer would be when it comes to dialing your leads and having them in queue ready for agents to speak with as soon as they release a call. So your dial timeout is simply the number of seconds or the amount of time the dialer would allow the phone to ring before terminating that call and considering the call or no answer and properly dispositioning that individual lead. And alternate phone number dialing and alternate phone number dispositions simply allows you to dial alternate phone numbers. Again, that's if your records have multiple phone numbers. So alternate phone number dialing simply allows you to enable or disable alternate phone number dialing. And alternate phone number disposition would tell the system when to dial the alternate phone number. So if that primary record results in one of the following dispositions or one of the dispositions selected within the alternate phone number dialing dispositions, at that point the system would trigger dialing the alternate phone number. Now, the do not call options are pretty much self-explanatory. You have the campaign level do not call, wireless do not call, or master do not call. And, of course, any record that disposition as do not call and the campaign has the DNC enabled, of course, that phone number is automatically added to that campaign's DNC database, in which case that phone number is no longer dialable within that given campaign. Now, if the campaign has the master DNC enabled, then and the call is dispositioned as do not call, now that phone number is added to not only the campaign DNC, but also the master DNC. And that phone number is no longer dialable within this specific campaign or any other campaigns that has the master DNC enabled. Okay, so as discussed, the dialer queue and the dialer queue level are simply allows you to determine your ready queue size, and of course, as explained, the ready queue size or the ready queue is the pool of leads that the dialer actively dials from. Okay, and of course, your queue size range anywhere between 1 and 5,000 records at a time. Okay. Dialing filters, as we mentioned, allows you to filter your leads based on pretty much any criteria you've uploaded into the system. So any field you've uploaded, such as first name, last name, city, state, zip, any piece of data you've uploaded as part of a lead record, you're able to create filters and filter by that data. So where we left off during our previous call was the dispositions to dial. So we were discussing how to recycle leads. And as mentioned, you have two options for lead recycling. You have this one here, which is the dispositions to dial. What this allows you to do is within this drop down, you would simply select the dispositions you deem to be recyclable. So once the dialer dials through your dialing list, at that point, every single record on that list would have a disposition. You simply select the dispositions you like to be recyclable. And so once you've dialed through it, you can simply reset the list, and every single record that's been disposed as a disposition selected in this field would be dialable again, and the dialer will go back and make another attempt at dialing those records. So it's fairly simple. The one thing I would like to point out regarding using the dispositions to dial field is that resetting the list would be a manual process because once you dial through the list, the dialer will no longer dial that list unless you reset it. Okay, and of course you can reset your list within Census. So you'd go in Census, you'll click Edit on the dialing list, and within the Edit screen, you have a Reset drop-down to reset the list. Now, within the dialing list as well, you do have the option to set an automatic reset time. So let me just create a new blank list here without any data in it, just to show you what I'm referring to. Okay, so right now we're looking at Census, which is the application that manages your dialing list and records. So once you've dialed through your list, you have your list here. Of course, you'd have the number of records you have on the list. You simply click Edit, which will show you some additional information about the records on that file. And to reset the list, you'll simply set this drop down to yes and click Save. And that will tell the dialer to go back through that dialing list, and every record that has a disposition, which is selected within this dispositions to dial field, would become dialable again. Okay. Now, if you'd rather not make this a manual process and have the system automatically reset the list for you, we can do that as well. And that's using this scheduled reset times field within the list itself. So within every list, you're able to specify these times where at that time frame or that time, the system would automatically reset the list for you. Okay, and that time would have to be specified in military format, so in 24-hour format, and it has to be in GMT 00 time zone. So for example, the GMT 00 time zone is 5 hours ahead of Eastern time. So if you'd like your list to reset at 12 p.m. Eastern, you simply set your automatic reset time to 1500. And at 12 p.m. Eastern, the system will automatically reset this list for you. Okay, so that's your first option for recycling leads. So, and in which case you would have to manually reset the list or set a reset time where the system automatically resets it for you. The second option for resetting or recycling leads would be using the Dispositions tab, and this is the option I would recommend for you. Now, in the Dispositions tab, for every single disposition you create, you have the ability to specify a redial delay and a max attempt. So the redial delay, you can think of it as a cooldown period. So what you're saying here is when a lead is dialed and that record is dispositioned as this specific disposition, you can apply a cooldown period for that record or for that disposition. And the system would wait a minimum of that amount of time before making another attempt at dialing this record. Now, this value is specified in seconds. So, for example, 14,440 would represent, of course, 14,440 seconds. That's roughly about 4 hours. Okay, so what you're saying here is when any record that's dispositioned as new disposition, the system has to wait a minimum of 4 hours before making another attempt at dialing that record. And the max attempt is exactly that, the maximum number of attempts to make. So if I set this to 10, for example, what I'm saying here is once that lead is disposition as this disposition, we would wait 4 hours before we make another attempt, and we'll make a maximum number of 10 attempts. So if that record has been dialed a few times and that 10th call results in this specific disposition, that record is no longer dialable, okay, unless you come in here and increase the max attempt value. And using this option, this is automatic. You don't have to go in and reset the list. The system already has that countdown or that cooldown period, and as soon as that expires, that record will be dialable automatically for you without the administrator or manager interacting with the system at all. Okay. So any questions for me regarding lead recycling? Cindy?
I think I have a question when we come to list management, more so, Judson, about suppressing specific area codes or areas. So that's going to be my next question.
Gotcha. Okay. So we'll go back to the dialer tab. So if you guys don't have any other questions for me regarding the recycling. Okay, now following the dispositions to dial field, we have a few more options, such as the dialer routing method. And the dialer routing method allows you to determine how the system will route your automated outbound calls when somebody answers. So we'll use this drop down, and as you can see, you have 4 options. So your first 2 options would be to route to an agent, either with AMD or without AMD. So basically what you're saying here is with AMD is the dialer dials out, somebody answers, the dialer would try to determine whether it's a live person or some sort of a machine who answered the call. And if we determine that's an answering machine that answered the call, we can either hang up the call or leave a voicemail or drop a message on that answering machine. And we can do that easily using the following 2 fields. So if your dial route method is set to send call to the next available agent on any server after AMD, which means AMD is enabled and AMD is answering machine detection, that means we have the ability to detect the voicemail. So now you have an option to leave a message or simply hang up the call. If you'd like to simply hang up the call, then your answering machine message option, you simply set that to do not play a message when answering machine is detected. So the system detects an answering machine, that call is terminated immediately. The system detects a live person, that call is then forwarded to an agent. If you would like to leave a voicemail, then of course you'll change this setting here to play message below when an answering machine is detected. And of course in the field below, you'll specify the exact message you'd like to leave. Now, this messaging would have to be uploaded into the prompts and messages application before it's available for you to select from here. Okay. Now, the other option in terms of routing your calls, instead of routing the calls to an agent, either with or without answering machine detection, we can route calls to a survey. And what the survey allows you to do is to play a pre-recorded prompt, giving these individuals the option to opt in or opt out. So you'll play a message as soon as someone answers that says who you are, what you're calling about. If they'd like to speak to somebody, press 1. If they're not interested or would like to be added to the do not call list, press 2. And of course, within the survey settings, you can specify what happens when any given digit value is selected. Okay. And of course, with that, you also have the ability to do it with answering machine detection or without answering machine detection. And the answering machine detection works the same way in both cases. You would have the option to leave a message if an answering machine is detected or to simply hang up the call. Okay. Now, AMD seconds and repeat options. This field you guys would not need to worry about because we have a default value set on the back end of the system, so you wouldn't need to put anything there. Now, phone number prefix, whether or not you'd like to include the phone number prefix, depends on what type of program you're running. Primarily if you're running international auto dialing. So if you have a program where you're automatically dialing international phone numbers, this field will be very important, but it relies on the phone number format that's on your dialing list itself. So if your phone numbers on your dialing list already include the country code as part of the phone number, then you'd want to set this to exclude phone number prefix. If your phone number on the dialing list does not include the country code, simply the phone number, then you need to include the prefix. And the reason being is during the import process, we ask you what country these phone numbers are associated with. When you select that given country, we automatically add that country's country code as the phone number prefix. So if your phone numbers already include the country code, then you have to exclude the prefix. Otherwise, you'll dial invalid phone numbers because you dial 011, the country code, and then the country code again, and then the phone number, in which case your calls will not route properly. Okay, so what you set this setting to really depends on how the phone numbers are formatted on your dialing list, at least for international programs where you're automatically dialing international phone numbers. Okay. So any questions on the general outbound settings before we move to the next section? Hello?
You can go ahead, Judson. I don't think there's any questions.
Sure, perfect. Okay, so now we'll move to the last two sections here on the dialer tab, which would be manual outbound settings and safe harbor settings. So the manual outbound settings govern how the system interacts with your agent and function when the agent is performing a manual outbound call where the agent manually types in the phone number and clicks dial. So you can either allow or disallow manual calls for this given campaign, obviously. You can determine whether or not you'd like to enforce the hours of operations. Remember, the hours of operation applies to your lead's time zone. So if you're enforcing the hours of operation on manual calls, the system will stop an agent from manually dialing a record where it's outside of the hours of operation for that given record. In terms of caller ID, you can display the general campaign caller ID, which is the caller ID that's specified on the general tab of your campaign, or you can display the caller ID that's on the agent's extension. Okay, so it's really up to you in terms of what you would like to display for your caller ID when the agents make a manual call. Okay. Now, calling filters. So you can enforce the do not call checklist. So basically, you can apply the do not call to manual calls as well. The same way the dialer does not dial a phone number that's on the do not call database. If you enforce the do not call for manual calls, when your agents type in the phone number and click dial, the system would process that phone number against that campaign's do not call database. And if the phone number is included in that database, the system will not allow the agent to make that manual call. I'll click edit on sentence. And manual outbound dialing outbound list simply allows you to specify a default outbound list. So when your agents make a manual outbound call, the system will grab that phone number, search against whatever list you specified here. If that phone number is found within that list, the data is displayed to the agent. If not, then that phone number is then added to that dialing list. Mm-hmm. Now, preview and preview limit, these are for preview campaigns. So if you're making manual outbound preview campaigns, you can specify whether or not agents are allowed to skip records, whether or not you're forcing them to preview the record before manually dialing it, or just simply dialing the number without previewing the lead at all. And the preview seconds determines the length of time the agent can stay on the lead previewing the data. So if you set this to 30, that means once the agent clicks dial next and has that data in front of them, they have 30 seconds to review that record before the system automatically launches the call. And the pre-select lead lookup, just to explain to you what that is, on the agent interface, when you're manually making a call, you have the option to search any dialing list that's associated with that campaign for the phone number you're calling. And it's just a simple little checkbox. So if you have this set to pre-select, that simply means that checkbox is selected for the agent automatically. Of course, you have the option to unselect it, but by default, it's selected already. Okay, so that covers pretty much the functionality behind manual calling for the campaign. Now, the safe harbor settings applies to predictive campaigns. And the safe harbor setting just allows you to specify a few rules in terms of how limiting your predictive dialer. So your drop percentage limit allows you to determine your maximum acceptable drop percentage. So if you set this to 5, what the predictive dialer will do is predictively dial out. And once you've reached a 5% abandonment rate, the dialer will then slow itself down to reduce your abandonment percentage. And that's done for you automatically on the back end. Now, the abandonment limit here is the amount of seconds the dialer would wait for an agent to take the call before considering the call as an abandoned call and terminating that call. So dialer dials out, somebody answers, we detect a live person, we try to push that call to an agent. It just so happened, of course, in a predictive campaign, you're dialing multiple lines at a time. So it just so happened you got a lot of answers and all of your agents are on calls. Now you have a few extra calls. Now, being that all of your agents are on calls, that call that was just answered is now on hold and is queued ready to go to an agent. So the abandoned seconds limit, if that is set to 5, the system would queue that call for 5 seconds. Hopefully an agent becomes available within that 5 seconds and they'll take the call. If an agent does not become available within that 5 seconds, the system would consider that call to be abandoned and terminate the call at that point. And of course, disposition that record as abandoned. Now, you have complete control of these values, so you can change this to 3 seconds or 20 seconds. It's really up to you. Now, abandoned seconds action, what this allows you to do is to take an action. So by default, if you don't specify anything here, by default, once that abandoned seconds limit is reached, the call is terminated. But you can change that default action. So instead of terminating the call, you can play a pre-recorded message to that individual. You can route the call to voicemail if you'd like. You can send the call to an ACD queue to be handled by another agent. You can just simply play this an audio file or route the call to an IVR. So you have options in terms of what to do with any calls that are not answered within the drop percentage seconds limit. Okay, and again, by default, that call is just simply terminated. So if you decide to play a message when this limit is reached, you select play a message, and down here you specify the message you'd like to play. If you'd like to push it to a phone number or an extension, of course, you'll select the appropriate route and specify the extension or phone number you'd like to forward the call to here. And again, same thing with voicemail, ACDQ, or IVR. You specify what type of route you'd like to use, and of course, use the appropriate field to specify the route. Okay, that pretty much covers all of the functionality and settings within the dialer tab. And we can move forward to the other tabs if you guys don't have any questions for me here.
No, I just want to make sure that everyone, please mute your calls or your phones. I hear some background noise, but if you need to speak up or ask a question, just unmute your phones. I don't have any questions right now, Judson. I know it's a lot of information. Seems self-explanatory now. I'm sure that when we start the process at the sites, Samantha and David having a little bit more familiarity with the account because they've got it in a live environment, they still do have questions I see on a day-to-day basis when something comes up. But, you know, as soon as we start programming within it ourselves, I'm sure we're going to have some more questions. But I don't have any. Does anybody? I'm opening up the floor. Do we have any questions for Judson right now?
Me so far.
No.
For me.
Okay, Judson, take it away.
Okay, great. Now, two things I'd like to do here to move forward. We'll skip a few tabs. So the first one I'd like to cover is what we discussed briefly earlier in terms of the dialer routing method. And again, in terms of the routing method, you have two options. You can push the call to an agent once it's answered with or without AMD, or you can push the call to a broadcast or survey once it's answered. And again, that's with or without AMD. If you guys are doing broadcast or survey campaigns, of course, you select the appropriate routing option. And to set up your broadcast, you'd use the survey tab. So we'll skip a few tabs. We'll go over to survey and just discuss that briefly. Now, to build broadcast or survey campaigns is fairly simple. Of course, you set your route to go to survey, and then you'll go to survey tab and apply your survey settings. So some of the settings you'll apply here would be the message that's being played, because you have to play a message to these individuals, letting them know what their options are. And once you have that message specified, you simply create and route your routing options. So in the first section, you specify the message to be played, and of course that message would have to be uploaded into the system before it's available for you here. Now, the second field, the digits accepted, allows you to specify your acceptable digit values. So, for example, let's say I have a survey where I'm giving two options. So option one, you press 1 to speak to an agent, or press 2 if you're not interested and would like to be added to the do not call list. For that broadcast, my acceptable digits would be 1 and 2. Okay, and the third field would allow me to specify or just have some comments or notes in terms of what each digit value represents. Okay, so I can erase all of this, set option 1 to opt in, and option 2 would be do not call. And that's just a description. So when you run your reports, you can see this description on the reports. You optionally can set a message that's played after a selection has been made. You don't have to, but you can. Now, the default option is not selected. What you're doing here is you're telling the dialer when to push a call to that opt-in option or that opt-in route. So the call is answered, you can push it to an agent or to your opt-in route if someone presses the opt-in digit value, or you can push it no matter what. So if they don't make a selection and they're still on the phone, you can push it to that route as well. So you have those two options here. Now, for your acceptable value, so if somebody presses 1, I want to push that call to an agent. So what I'll do is, down here in routing option, what I'll do, I'll set this to send calls to the next available agent. So whenever somebody presses 1, any agent who's logged into that campaign and is available will be able to take that call. That person will be pushed to that agent. Now, if somebody presses 2 for not interested or do not call, what I'll do here in my not interested digit value, I'll set this to 2, and I would apply my do not call disposition. Okay, so anyone that selects 2 on that survey, their call will terminate, and that lead will be dispositioned as do not call within the campaign-specific DNC database. Okay, and of course, you can play an optional message when this option is selected. Now, as you can see, you have up to 2 additional routing options. So if you have more options, such as press 1 to speak to an agent, press 2 if you're not interested or do not call, you can give additional options such as press 3 if you'd like to be routed to voicemail, or press 4 if you'd like to be routed to our front desk. And of course, you'll set those options appropriately. Okay. So any questions in terms of setting up broadcast or survey campaigns? Okay, so I'll take that as a no.
Now, let me ask you this with the scripting, and I don't know if this is another topic when we go underneath a different topic when it comes to surveys, Judson, right? And when we do setups on that, I understand because of the scripting, it's not really able to be built to capture that information. I noticed that we're on the survey tab, so that's why I'm asking, in regards to survey and scripting capabilities, we would have to find a different way of capturing surveys, right?
Well, what do you mean? Or you mean capturing data from the individuals you're calling?
Like skip patterns and and all that when we set up the accounts for like survey accounts. When we have like a script that's going to require us to have, a skip pattern, yes, no, gender-based, things like that, when we have to pull it, we're able to pull that information.
And just to make sure we're on the same page, you're referring to a program where you don't have a live agent taking that call.
No, no, no. I'm talking about a live agent making the call and the scripting capabilities of the Fenero to have it build out and have text box fields, drop downs, like a regular survey environment.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Well, yes, you have the ability to create custom fields within your list. So when the dialer dials any record on the list, the custom fields you created will be presented to the agent, whether it's just a simple text field, a drop down field, or multi-select field. Okay, and of course, you can run interaction detail report, interaction detail log, and that would extract all of the data captured by the agent.
So on this IVR, when we have this IVR, let's say for IVR that's set up, and we've got, a customer that calls in, and we can build it to where there's a survey. So let's say it's built by option 1, 2, 3, and how they answer. We can set it up that way for it to capture that data as well, and export it when we need it. So if we have a survey, customer sat survey, and it's based by multiple choice or, by 1, 2, 3, we can build that IVR that way?
Well, yes. Now, this survey that I'm referring to here is something completely different.
Okay.
Okay, so what you're referring to is an IVR, which we are able to support. So you'll build your IVR with all of your options, and of course you can have a multi-level IVR, and you can have an IVR that's as deep as you need. There's absolutely no limit. But what this does here, it allows you to have just an automated campaign that dials out a list of phone numbers and play a message. Okay, when that message is played, you can give these individuals options to press 1 or 2 and route to take the call at that point.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll move back to the dialer tab since we've discussed the broadcast program or broadcast campaigns. Now, the next thing I wanted to cover from the dialer tab is the list tab, which is just one tab over. The list tab allows you to manage how the dialer interact with your list as well as the sorting order for dialing through your individual leads. Okay, so on the list tab of your campaign, you have the ability to specify the caller ID for your outgoing calls. So you can use the campaign's generic or general outbound caller ID, which is specified on the general tab of your campaign. You can use the caller ID associated for each given lead. So for every single lead record, you can have a specific caller ID for each record. And of course, that has to be specified as part of your dialing list when you're importing it. And when the dialer dials a phone number, it would display the caller ID associated with that record. Okay, and the last option, which would be using the CIDs tab, and that allows you to specify give a specific caller ID for every single area code. Okay, so following that setting, you have your lead search and filter options, and this simply allows you to determine how your agents are able to search your dialing list. So from within the agent interface, your agent has a search option that allows them to search for records, and you can specify whether they're only able to search active dialing lists or both active and inactive dialing lists, or just simply dialing lists associated with that campaign or any other dialing list. Now, these next two settings, primary lead sorting and secondary lead sorting, allows you to determine exactly how the dialer would dial through your list. So by default, the sorting order is first in, first out. So the first lead to be imported into the system is the first lead the dialer dials. The last lead to be imported into the system is the last lead the dialer dials. That's the default. You have quite a few options here. So you can sort your leads not only first in, first out, you can sort it by last in, first out. And again, the option you choose depends on your program. Some programs, the data is more sensitive than others, in which case you always want to dial the newest, freshest lead. If that's the case for you, then you would want to choose last in, first out. That way the newest lead, which is the last lead imported, is always the first lead to be dialed out. Okay, so your options would be to dial by time zone from east to west or from west to east. You can dial by number of call attempts. You can dial randomly, of course. You can dial based on oldest call date. You can dial based on last name from A to Z or from Z to A. So you have a wealth of different sorting options, and you determine the order to sort your leads based on your individual programs. Okay, so you have the primary, which is, of course is the primary, and the secondary would be a tiebreaker. Now, the second to last field in this section here would be the randomized lead sorting. And this just simply allows you to randomly jump from list to list. So if this individual campaign has multiple dialing lists associated with it, and all of those lists are active, you can jump from list to list dialing these records. Whereas if you have this set to do not order dialing list randomly, what the system would do is the first list it starts with, it will dial through that entire list before moving on to another. Okay, so it's really up to you in terms of how you would like to dial through your records. So if you only want to dial through one list and then move on to the next and the next, then you'll want to set this to no. If you'd like to randomly dial leads between multiple lists, then of course you come in here and order your dialing list randomly, so the dialer would jump between lists. Okay. Now, agent-owned leads allows you to associate or assign individual lead records on your dialing list to specific agents. Now, this has to be done during the import process. You can't, once your leads are imported into the system, you cannot assign them to an agent. So during the import process on the CSV file itself, you'll create a new column. You can call it owner or you can call it agent. And within that column, for each individual record, you specify the agent username that record is assigned to. And if you do that and you come in here and allow agents to own leads, what that would do is when the dialer dials out, it would only route a call to an agent where that lead record is associated or assigned to that agent. Okay. Now, the second section here, the scheduled callback section, simply governs how the dialer would allow, whether or not it allows your agents, one, to schedule callbacks, and two, how the agents are alerted for those callbacks. So the very first field, allow scheduled callbacks. You can either allow or disallow callbacks. And if callbacks are allowed on the campaign, anytime the agent selects the callback disposition, they're presented with a calendar to specify the exact callback date and time. Okay, and of course, when that callback date and time arrives, the system would alert your agents that they have a callback and give them the options or the option to dial that individual record. Okay. So show scheduled callback count. Determine which callbacks to display to your agent. So you can display all callbacks, which I would not recommend. I would recommend you display only callbacks whose time is near. That way your agents are only alerted about callbacks that's actually coming up instead of a callback that's 5 to 10 days away. Okay. Now, callback date limit allows you to limit how far out an agent can schedule a callback. So, for example, if I set this to 10, that means an agent is not able to schedule a callback further than 10 days from now. Okay? And 0 pretty much means there is no limit. An agent can set a callback for as far out as needed. Okay. Next two settings here, agent-only callback and schedule callback alerts. Agent-only callback, again, on the agent interface, on that callback calendar. So your agent selects callback as the disposition, they'll get a calendar. to specify a date and time. And below that calendar, there's a little checkbox that allows them to determine whether that callback should be for the agent who creates it or a general callback where that callback will go to any agent who's logged into the system during the callback date and time. Okay? So if you select here to pre-select that callback checkbox for the agent, that means by default that my callback only, specifying that that callback is specifically for that given agent, is automatically checked. And the agent has the option to uncheck it, but by default it will be checked for them automatically. And schedule callback alerts just determines how the agent is alerted for their callback. So on the agent interface, you can either flash and blink the number of callbacks that they have when those callbacks are near, or you can flash and blink and stop, or you can keep flashing until the agent clicks on it. So it's really up to you in terms of how you'd like to alert your agents. And that's pretty much it for the list tab. And again, on the list tab, it serves two purposes. One, you determine, well, three purposes. One, you would determine how the dialer would dial through your leads or the sorting order for your leads. You will determine what caller ID is used. And, of course, you will determine how the system would, whether or not the system allows agents to schedule callbacks and how those agents are alerted for those callbacks. Okay, so any questions there?
No, I'm good. Anybody, team? Anybody got any questions for Judson on this part?
Okay, so that's what we've covered so far is the bulk of the campaign settings. The next few tabs are fairly straightforward, and we'll move through them rather quickly. So let's just get to it and see if you guys have any additional questions for me. So the next tab over is the Experts tab, which is the Transfers tab. So on the Transfers tab, you can do a few different things here. The three-way outbound caller ID. So if your agents are transferring calls, you can determine what caller ID is displayed to the third party. So use the campaign's caller ID would simply use the general campaign's caller ID. So you transfer a call, the person you're transferring the call to would see the campaign's phone number as the caller ID. Another option would be to use first party, which is what I would recommend, unless there's a reason not to use this. When you transfer a call using this specific option, what the third party would see is the customer's phone number. So the dialer dials out, the dialer dials the customer's phone number, you've got the person on the line, agent qualified that record, and is now transferring that individual to a third party. So the third party would see the customer's phone number as the incoming call opposed to the campaign's phone number as the incoming call. Also, on the three-way or Expert tab, you have the ability to specify a few presets. So if your agents are transferring calls to the exact same phone numbers every time, you can type these phone numbers in here. And have these as a preset. So on the agent interface, when they click that transfer conference button, this phone number would automatically pre-populate for them. They won't have to manually type it in every single time. Okay. Now, just a few other settings here. Data capture IVR and data capture scripts. These are settings that allows you to, so while an agent's on a call, the agent can transfer the call to an IVR. So for compliance purposes, for capturing, for example, credit card information, we can build a custom IVR for you. Of course, once we have that custom IVR built out, it will be available here, where when it comes to the point where your agent has to capture credit card information or any other sensitive piece of data, instead of having the agent capture that data on the call where it's being recorded, and of course the agent hears that information, the agent can at that point transfer the call to this custom IVR, where within the custom IVR, the system would ask for the credit card information. The system would ask for the social security number or whatever other piece of data you'd like to capture. Once the individual provides the system with the data, the system would ask them to confirm, and of course repeating the data provided. Once the individual has confirmed that the data capture is correct and accurate, the system will then automatically transfer that person back to the agent to finish the call. Okay, and so that's pretty much it for the transfer tab. Now, there's a few other settings here in terms of whether or not you'd like to pre-populate the presets. That just simply allows you to specify which preset would automatically populate the agent interface. And you can determine what happens with the call when end call is pressed. So, for example, while the agent's on a call, if the agent clicks end call, you can then push that call out to another phone number or to another ACD queue. So the main purpose for this would be like a CSAT or customer satisfaction survey. So as soon as the agent hangs up the call is then automatically transferred to the survey for that individual to take the survey. Any questions here?
None here.
Great. Okay, so now we'll move to the CIDs tab, which I believe we covered briefly during our last conversation. And this tab is only used if you're using the caller ID based on the lead's area code. Okay, so if you have this selected here as your caller ID for outgoing calls, then the system would go to this tab. For every single caller ID, for every single area code that's dialed, the system would display the specified caller ID. And that's pretty much it for this tab here. Now, disposition, this is where you'll create your list of dispositions, which is available to the agent. Now, one recommendation I would make in terms of disposition is if you're running a manual campaign where the agent is manually triggering the call, either by clicking dial next or manually typing in the phone number to dial it, I would recommend you only use custom dispositions because there's no point in using the system dispositions if you're not using the automated dialer. Now, if you are using the automated dialer where you have an automatically dialing program, then I would recommend you use both system dispositions because with the auto dialer, of course, when the dialer dials out, it would automatically disposition some of your calls for you. And some of those dispositions would be no answer system, answering machine system, disconnected phone number. So the reason I recommend using system dispositions when you're using the automatic dialer is to give you control over the redial delay. And again, the redial delay is like a cooldown period for your record, which determines the amount of time the system would wait before making another attempt at dialing that record and the maximum attempt. So if you don't have system dispositions enabled, you don't have control over that. Therefore, you'd have to manually reset your list to dial those records. And you can easily determine whether or not you're using system dispose or only custom dispose in the general tab of the campaign. So as you can see for now on this campaign, I only have one disposition, which is a custom disposition that I've created. I'll go into the general tab of the campaign here, and using the custom and system disposition field, I can tell the system to use both custom as well as my system dispose and click save. What you'll notice is when I go back to that dispositions tab, not only would I have the custom disposition I created, but the system built-in dispositions would also be available for me to manipulate there as well. So as you can see here, I have my one custom disposition that I created, which is new disposition, and all of the system dispositions are available for me as well. And you'll notice if I click edit, I have control over the redial delay and max attempt for the system dispositions, the same way I have control over it for my custom disposition. Okay. Now, these four drop downs you're looking at on the right would stand for final, sort of going from left to right. The first one represents final. The second one represents contact. The third one is RPC, which is right party contact. And the last would be sale. One thing to keep in mind about these different flags or classifications is that this does not affect your dialing in any way, shape, or form. This doesn't affect dialing at all. Okay, this is purely for reporting purposes. So when you take a look at census and you click edit on the dialing list, you're able to see the number of leads that are finalized based on the flag that's set within these given dispositions. Okay, so the main thing to keep in mind is that this does not affect your dialing. What does affect your dialing is redial delay and max attempt. Okay, so any record or any disposition where you determine that it's a final disposition, such as not interested or do not call, for example, you set the final flag to yes. The contact disposition, so anytime an agent makes a call and that call ends up in the agent speaking with someone, then of course any of those dispositions should be classified as a contact, saying you contacted someone. A disposition where you've actually spoken with the party you intended to, such as a sale or not interested, then that disposition should be flagged as a RPC disposition, and sales is pretty much self-explanatory. Your sales disposition would have to be classified as a sale. That way, on your agent interface or on the real-time stat screen, when you're monitoring your live dashboard, you're able to see in real time how many sales you have for the day. And again, so these are for reporting purposes only. So if you don't have these flags set correctly for your specific dispositions, then that will throw off your reporting, because the reporting feeds off of the flags you have set for each disposition. So any questions from me here regarding the dispositions?
Judson, let's cover the redial delay and the max attempts. And I want to go over the final contact and RPC just one more time, so that way everyone understands. And because we're so heavily weighted on the dispositioning of all calls, so whether it's a callback, whether it's a not interested or a completed call, we're so heavily weighted on that. And I want to make sure that everybody understands this portion of it, because that's what we rely on our statistics for, our results.
Exactly. That is absolutely correct. When you run your reports and you pull your statistics, that is 100% reliant on the disposition itself. So one, you have to make sure your agents are selecting the appropriate dispositions, and of course, we need to make sure that your dispositions have the correct flag set. So just to briefly cover that again, your redial delay is, you can think of it as a cool down period. So that tells the system, hey, you've dialed this record. This record has resulted in this given disposition. And for this given disposition, I want that record to sit idle for a minimum of X amount of time before we make another attempt at dialing it. So that's what your redial delay does. It simply puts that lead aside for a predefined amount of time before it allows the dialer to make another attempt at dialing that record. The maximum attempt just simply specifies the maximum number of call attempts to be made. And again, that is specific to every individual disposition. So in this example, for answering machine agent, what we're saying is we have to wait 34,455 seconds before making another attempt at dialing a lead that was dispositioned as this specific dispo. What we're also saying here with the max attempt is we're only allowed to make 67 attempts with this disposition. So if the 67th call for any given record results in this disposition here, that record is no longer dialable. The system would not dial that individual record because your max attempt is 67, and the 67th call resulted in this disposition with that max attempt. Okay. Now, in terms of these flags, these are for reporting purposes only. Just to briefly cover some of these, a disposition like answering machine, which means the dialer dials out for some reason, which it happens because the answering machine detection is not 100%. It's about 95 to 98% accurate. An answering machine was detected as a live person, and that call was pushed to an agent. So the agent selected answering machine. Now, because it's an answering machine, it's not a final disposition, of course, because you didn't get a hold of anybody. So final would be set to no. It's not a contact, again, for the same reason, you did not get a hold of anyone. So contact will be set to no. And, of course, right party contact would also be no, and sales would be no because you didn't sell anything. You didn't accomplish your purpose for calling. Whereas a disposition such as callback would be at your discretion. It depends on when and how you instruct your agents to use that callback disposition. It can be done in one of multiple ways. So for callbacks, a callback could mean, okay, I got a hold of the correct person, but they just don't have the time at the moment. They want me to call them back on a specific day and time. If that's the case, then final, of course, is set to no. Contact is set to yes because you spoke with someone. Right party contact is set to yes because you spoke to the individual you intended to speak with. But sale would be set to no because you didn't make a sale. You have to call that individual back. Now, you can look at callbacks another way. Callbacks could simply mean you spoke to the gatekeeper. The person you actually intended to speak with was not available. In that case, your callback disposition would have the final flag set to no, the contact flag set to yes because you spoke to the gatekeeper, but the right party contact will be set to no because you didn't speak to the individual you intended to. So it really depends on how you're instructing your agents to use every single disposition you have available to them. Okay, so the purpose for each disposition really drives how these flags are set. And again, most of your reporting relies on these given flags per disposition. Okay, is that clear, or did you guys have any questions for me there?
I'm good. Anybody have questions about the dispositions? Now, Judson, I do have one question. You know, when we're in the system, and sometimes in our dialer that we work with, if there's like a default, if like an agent doesn't code out of that call properly, then what's the default code for a call that's being coded out that way?
Well, yeah. So if the agent doesn't disposition the call for whatever reason, or there was some sort of a network issue or computer issue where the agent was not able to disposition the call, then the system would automatically disposition that as agent error.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Okay. Now, since we've covered the dispositions, we've covered redial delay, we've covered max attempt, and we've covered the reporting flags. You can apply it to every disposition. Now, we'll take a look at the left side of your dispositions. You notice we have an arrow pointing up and a gray box next to every disposition.
Mm-hmm.
So what those allow you to do is to, either create a trigger or create a So you can either create a trigger for each of these dispositions or create a quota. So let's cover triggers quickly here. What triggers allows you to do is, per disposition, you can go ahead and take an action once that disposition is selected. So, for example, let's just create a sales disposition. So we'll create a disposition called sales. Of course, no redial delay, no max attempt, because it's a sale. There's no need to call it again, so we're not going to set a redial delay and max attempt. So any disposition that does not have a redial delay or max attempt is not a recyclable disposition. So once that disposition is selected, the system will never dial that record again. Okay, so for our sales disposition, so of course it's going to be a final because it's a sale. It's going to be a contact, it's a right party contact, and of course it's a sale. So we'll click our plus sign to add that disposition. So what we can do here is, for sales disposition or any other disposition you've decided, is create a trigger. So we'll click on the trigger icon, which gives us a pop-up that allows us to specify what type of trigger we'd like to create. And we have 3 options. So what we can do is, every time this sales disposition is selected, we can grab all of the lead data that we have on the list and copy all of that data to a separate dialing list. So if you have a program where you're setting appointments, what you can do is dynamically create a list of appointments. So what you'll do is, the agent selects that appointment disposition, the system automatically copies the lead data to a secondary list. So at the end of the program, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, once you've made all of the appointments you need, you can then use that appointment list as a report to view all of your appointments, of course, and 2, you can use that as a dialing list for your agents to then dial and verify and confirm those appointments. Okay. Now, your second option would be a launch URL. Now, the launch URL serves multiple purposes, and mainly what that's used for is to push data from Fenero into some sort of outside system. So if you have a CRM or any other system you have in-house that has an API using a URL, we can call that system's API string and pass along all of the data we have in Fenero into that system. Okay, and the third option would be email, and that's pretty much the same. You specify an email address. So once that disposition is selected, all of the data we have in the system for that lead is then emailed to whatever email address you have with all of that lead's data along with the disposition selected. Okay, so any questions regarding the triggers?
Nope.
Okay, and again, the triggers are disposition specific, so if you need, you can have a trigger for every disposition, and of course, each trigger can take its own action. They don't have to be all the same. Okay, now in terms of quotas, you can simply tell the system to stop dialing subsets based on previous dispositions. So basically, you can choose your list. You can tell the system what field to look out for. So basically, you're saying, so if the city equals Miami on this given list, and I have, for example, 10 records dispositioned with this quota to stop dialing all leads that have this city. Okay, so you can create these quotas pretty much as a rule for the dialer to stop dialing specific leads based on the number of records that have a specific disposition with that given data set within the selected field. Okay? So what you're saying here is if the city field equals Miami and I have 10 positive dispositions where the city field already equals Miami, stop dialing records that has Miami in the city field. And it's pretty much that basic. Now, this is for quotas. Now, in terms of what you mentioned earlier, Cindy, where you'd like to create filters by city, state, zip, this is not how you do that using our custom filters. Okay, so if you don't have any questions for me here or any other questions regarding the dispositions tab, we can move on to the next. Okay, but the main thing I want to really drive home with the dispositions tab is mainly redial delay, max attempt, and the 4 flags of final contact, right party contact, and sales, because those really, really affect your program, and not only in terms of dialing, but also in terms of reporting.
Right.
Justin, this is Mitch. I want to make sure I understand that quota that we just went through there. Can you bring that back up?
Sure.
So I know we have a separate field where we can do the list management, but my question is here, for one of my largest clients, cross country, so I could go in here, select the list from cross country. I'd put state. I'd put like CA because that's always what they have in there for California. Now the limit quota, like this is only going to. This will not. The quota is not max attempts, correct?
No, the quota is not max attempts.
Okay. Okay.
So just to go with your example here. Okay. Now keep in mind, I clicked on quota for the answering machine. So no, this is not a good example. Let's just use the sales. So let's say for sales, right? Okay. What we're saying here is if we have on this specific list, of course we don't have a list here. Well, actually we do have our test list that I created earlier. So on this specific list that we're dialing through this campaign, if the state field has a value of CA.
I see.
Okay, so what we're saying is, for example, let's say 200. So what we're saying is if we have 200 records that were dispositioned as sale, stop dialing leads on this list where the state equals California.
Okay, that makes sense. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so if we don't have any other questions here, but again, before we move on, I just really want to make sure everyone understands redial delay, max attempt, and the 4 flags.
As a heads up, Judson, we are at the cutting way of 20 minutes, so we've got 20 minutes remaining.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that's enough to finish up with the campaign here. So if you don't have any other questions regarding these flags, the redial delay and max attempt, that's great. And of course, you guys can always reach out to me at any point in time if you do have questions later. Now, what I do want to mention while we're here, because again, the entire purpose of redial delay and max attempt is for lead recycling. And again, we have 2 options for doing it. What I would recommend is this route using redial delay and max attempt. The second option, which is my least favorite, is using dispositions to dial. So you'll come in here and select the dispositions you want to be recyclable. And of course, if you choose that option, then on your disposition tab, there's no need to specify redial delays or max attempts for any of your dispositions. Okay? So if you do use the dispositions to dial and you have max attempts and redial delays specified, at that point you're using 2 recycling rules and they may contradict each other. So I wouldn't recommend using both. Okay, so moving on, we'll go to the pause codes tab, and the pause codes is pretty simple. It's just the list of reasoning that your agents would be logged into the system, but in a not ready status. So while an agent is logged into Fenero, they can be in one of multiple states, which is either idle, waiting for a call, active, talking, speaking to somebody actively on a call, ACW, after call work, which is I've spoken to someone, I've ended the call, and now I'm on the screen where I'm selecting a disposition or capturing any additional data or taking any call notes. And of course, the 4th state would be aux, or not ready. Aux or not ready is a state where the agent is actively logged into the system, but the system will not push any calls to that agent. Okay? Now, that can be for one of multiple reasons, whether the agent had to get up to go to the bathroom, the agent had to go speak to the supervisor and ask a question, the agent is in training. There's a wealth of different reasons as to why your agents will be logged in, but they're not ready. And I'm pretty sure your agents can come up with a million reasons. But here, you can specify what those reasons are, whatever you deem to be acceptable. So you can put restroom, training. So you can create a whole list of whatever you deem to be acceptable here. And while your agents are logged in, whenever they click on pause to put themselves in not ready, the system will present them with this list of reasoning, and they'll have to select one. Without selecting one, the system will not put them in not ready. Okay, now, of course, you can make this optional. So if you make this optional, the system will not force them to pick one. The system would allow them to go in not ready. If you make it required, they have to select one before they're able to go in not ready. And when they select one on your dashboard where you're monitoring all of your agents, you're able to see what state the agent is in. So you'll see the agent is in not ready. Of course, the pause reason, whether it's not ready restroom, not ready training, not ready coaching, whatever the case may be. And you're able to see exactly how long or the length of time the agent has been in that given state. Okay, the survey tab we've already covered. The last tab on the agent, on the campaign, is the interface. And this simply allows you to either restrict or allow specific functionality within the agent interface. So I'll just allow me to quickly log into the agent interface here just to show you what I'm referring to. So this is the agent interface. Of course, you have the agent name. You can upload a picture of the agent if you'd like. The campaign the agent is logged into, date and time, number of sales the agent had for the day, total calls for the day, average talk time, average wait time, total number of calls in queue. And, of course, we have our basic contact information. So all of the data you've inputted into the system will be displayed to the agent using these fields. Okay, and, of course, we have our list of actions we can take on the side. We can put, of course, these few options at the top, the first four, are grayed out because I'm not on a call, so I don't have the ability to put a call on hold. I can't transfer the call or hang up a call because I'm not on one. So as you can see, I can manually place the call. I can click down next. If I had any callbacks, they would be displayed to me here, and I can click on callbacks to view my list of callbacks. And as you can see, I have a More Actions button, and when I click that, the system gives me a sub-menu of different actions I can take. Okay, so including show agents, play a message, pause codes, and so on. Now, on the interface tab, you can either allow or disallow some of these icons that the agent has access to. So, for example, show my call log, you can turn that on or off. The average talk time or average wait time, which is displayed to the agent up here. You can enable or disable these. And pretty much it's the same for any other piece of information that's displayed on the agent interface. You can turn them on or off. So if you deem certain information is not necessary for your agents to view, you can go to the interface tab and completely disable that information from the agent. So when the agent logs in, these pieces of data will not even be available. The agent won't even know they're supposed to be there. Okay, so that's pretty much it in terms of the campaign configuration. Now, I know your campaign configuration has to interact with other aspects of the system, such as prompts and messages, which is where you upload your messages, or census, which is where you upload and manage your dialing list. So there's a lot of other components that comes to play when it comes to creating your campaign and have it function properly. But in terms of the campaign itself, this is pretty much it. So we'll have the general tab for the general settings, hours of operation, which determines when we are able to dial certain records. The users tab determines who's able to log into this campaign and who's able to view the data for it. The queues tab concerns incoming calls. We haven't covered that because we haven't talked about incoming calls or setting up inbound. So we'll come back to that when we get to the inbound section of the conversation. But the dialer and list tab allows you to manage how the dialer dials out, what leads are recyclable, whether or not it uses the do not call. And, of course, the list tab determines how the dialer dials through your dialing list in terms of sorting those the records. Extras tab controls what's available for the agent to transfer to. CIDs controls your caller ID if you'd like to show a local presence. Of course, the disposition tab covers your dispositions along with your recyclable rules based on redial, delay, max attempt. We have our 4 flags: final, contact, right party contact, sales, which heavily affects your reporting because all of your reporting relies on the disposition selected by your agents. And on the left side, we can set quotas as to when to stop dialing specific records or specific data sets, along with triggers, which would take a specific action on the back end without the agent even seeing it when specific dispositions are selected. Okay. Pause codes is fairly simple. It's straightforward. Your pause reasons. The survey tab is used to manage broadcast or survey programs. And, of course, the interface allows you to control what the agent has access to see on the agent interface. Okay. So I believe that's pretty much it for today. We've concluded the entire campaign configuration. So during our next call, we'll touch bases and go over some of the other components of the program. So next time we'll cover ACD queues, which would be the inbound side. So for the inbound side, we'll cover ACD queues, which is the queue that receives the incoming call, which is sort of like your waiting room. We'll cover DNS and ACR, which manages your phone numbers and how the phone calls are routed. We'll also touch bases on call menus, which is your IVR. So press 1 for this department, press 2 for that department. We'll cover that. And then we'll also cover census, which is dialing list upload and dialing list management.
And Judson, you know what I would think that would be a great idea to do? Is to, at the completion of this, probably get like a basic outbound account with a script, maybe like a sample of maybe 20 or 30 records, like mock data, and have the GMs set up an account. So if I've got, my Nick, Mitch, Ebony, Samantha, and Dave that are using this application, what I think would be great is that we throw out a script, some data, and then probably build a demo account like this AnswerNet demo, and probably do like 5 different separate campaigns, and have each manager have like every, maybe within that week we can schedule a call every day just to go over the accounts, and they would have to be the ones to program this.
Sure, that's perfect.
And I think that would be an idea. So I think for them to get feet wet is to set up, I can throw out like a mock script for different accounts and just your basic concept and, have them set it up and use this demo account. Is this the one that we could use to do that? I mean, when we get to that bridge, we can cross it. But I think that, it would be very helpful just to throw like a mock or a demo account to each manager, have them program in it, and then have us do like, our sessions, and then use one session that one day and just go over each account and critique the managers, and including myself, on how we set up the accounts.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a great idea. And as a matter of fact, you can use this account here. As a matter of fact, what I'll do, Cindy, I'll create a administrator account for you so you can access this demo account, and you can later on come in here and create and give everyone else access. So everyone can access this demo account. Everyone can build out their individual campaigns and have a go at it.
Yep. And they could build, everyone will be responsible for setting up one account. How do you guys think that's going to work? I think that'll be helpful because, we might as well get our hands into it. And if we have any questions as managers moving forward, I think that's going to help us. You guys think that's a good idea?
Great idea. I think, as we go on, as we're learning this, we're going to learn from each other, so that's good.
So Cindy, can you take a note of your username and password here?
Hold on one second. Go ahead and write this down. All right, Judson, hold on one second. All right. Oh, it's called the Cindy demo. All right, and I got this. I like that. That's cute. Cindy demo. 1, 2, 3. Cindy demo. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay, so you have the username and your password, and the company ID for this account is AnswerNet Demo, capital A, capital D.
Capital D, E-M-O. Okay, user, password, and we've got company ID. Okay, got it.
Perfect. So you can come in here and create user accounts for anyone who needs access to this demo account.
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. So as of right now, we've covered state